My introduction to deities was when we talked with a psychic in the US who had made a connection with Loki and Thor. A completely foreign concept to me, but when one of our listeners referred me to Kat, the world of foreign deities opened up for me. Enjoy. Tonight, on this rainy night, I'm not sure where you are, Kat, who was recommended to us actually by one of our friends on Discord, Kayulin. And he said that he had friends who connect with other or different deities. Na-curious ako, sabi ko, talaga, ano yung guides nila and whatever. Sabi niya, they have Norse and Egyptian guides nga daw. So tonight we have Kat who focuses on the Norse pantheon. I'm not sure which one, so we'll find out tonight. Okay, so hello Kat, good evening.
Hello, good evening, Nick. Hi, I'm looking forward to this.
Ay, me also. so I'll jump straight to it first before prodding into your personal life. Pero at what age did you realize na you had that connection with Norse gods?
Very surprising kasi I discovered it or rather, let's say I accepted the invitation very late, so mga 27. So
Okay.
I was undergoing quite a tumultuous phase career-wise, spiritual-wise. But ever since talaga, ironically, I was very much inclined to the Norse pantheon noong high school ako kasi super obsessed ako back then with Ragnarok Online. So if familiar kayo ng
Yes.
Ragnarok Online,
Galing. Oo.
Noong mga batang 90s, yun ang parang ang peak MMORPG back then. High school ako. Tapos, yes, Loki server, let's go. Parang ganyan. Kasi nga, nakita kong manhwa. And then, dyan, I started to read more. Very obsessed ako back then with the Greek mythology, Roman mythology. But iba talaga yung dating ng Norse mythology sa akin. And naging soul-searching siya. I studied runes until eventually at 27 years old, I said that, fuck it. I'm going to finally take the deep dive. So mahaba siyang journey.
Okay. So, is it okay na i-share mo lang? Parang, curious naman talaga yung mga listeners. So, how did you start it? Parang, did you read up on books on how to connect or talk with these guides or these spirits?
It's more on sa akin, it felt like, it's so weird enough, di ba? Sabi daw, kung nasa Christian school ka, di ba? Sabi daw ng mga pare at madre, parang may calling ka. It felt like that. It felt like that. That's why it was very conflicting for me because I came from a very Christian background. And it took a lot of decolonizing and de-Christianizing the text. So I really studied the text, the best way possible. But ayun, I at first I couldn't really put a name on it talaga. So I just decided to dive sa craft ko as Wicca. So yes, I started off as Wiccan. And then when it started to not feel right, yung path, that's when I decided, okay, sige, explore natin a little bit deeper. And then dyan ko na-discover yung Norse Pantheon. Although today, medyo iba na yung dating, but of course, like anyone's spiritual journey, it's not the same for everybody else. It can definitely change over time, but it does get stronger.
Which Norse deity did you connect with first?
Loki. Contrary to what people say, baka kasi during that time, nag-work ako with Loki, grabe yung MCU. So I worried a bit kasi baka it's because of Tom Hiddleston lang. Siguro ganyan. That's why I was also very hesitant. Kaya baka kasi it's because of the influence of the movies and the comics.
Yes.
But then again, the deeper I went, the more different it became kasi contrary to what MCU describes Loki, he is not like Tom Hiddleston. He is not guapo. to be
Okay.
honest. The most guapo of the gods is actually si Balder. That's why he is
Balder the
technically
Brave.
Balder the Brave, Balder the Beautiful.
Mm.
Although technically we would say that ang guapo sa kanila is like redhead. So Thor is also a redhead, and he's not like macho guapito just like Hemsworth. He's actually very weightlifter kind of physique. And Loki is actually very sharp angled face according sa myths. Tapos dami niyang scars, his mouth is sewn. He's technically not very guapo in modern day standards. So, okay, we'll work on this. And unlike the MCU na Loki, who's just very trickster,
Yes.
clever, ruthless yung Loki na nakilala ko. Because he was there, because I needed to work on a lot of personal things like shadow work, yung mga negative opinions ko on myself and my habits, and technically in life in general. So it was
Yes.
really a grueling, how many years?
Okay.
3 years.
Okay. So you're still in a sort of way connected with him, or parang
May
you've
expansion na.
may
May
expansion na. Okay.
I worked with I would say that's why I would say that I worked mostly with the Rokatru or the Rocker. So these are the ones that were considered as the quote-unquote villains of the Norse mythology. So nandyan na si Loki, si Angerboda, si Fenrir, Jormungandr, Hel, all the people like that. But currently now I'm working with partially with Hel,
Okay.
Fenrir, and of course si Freya. The only one that I'm working with the Aesir is Freya for mystical reasons. Kasi there are some things that Loki couldn't teach me anymore, but Freya can. And
Okay.
Freya is actually the mistress of magic and war, not only of beauty. So that's another misconception pop culture has given on Freya kasi maganda lang siya.
Okay. So baka yung mga ibang listeners parang naging curious sila, paano niya nakikita, paano siya nakaka-channel with that, or how do you communicate with them? So before we get to that, sige, we can go back to rewind, we can go back to the time na at what age, this is again, this is a usual question of mine, pero at what age did you start seeing or experiencing things that weren't normal for other people?
Oh, okay. Ever since I was a child, there were some stories na baby pa lang ako. There were really odd and paranormal things happening around me. For example, when I was a toddler daw or baby daw, we used to live in Manila, by the way. May mga old people that were always going near my stroller every afternoon and nagsasabing, ay maganda yung baby. And later on, nalaman daw nila na hindi pala yun matatanda. Diwata, engkanto.
Okay.
And they lived in the mango tree near our house.
Okay.
That was also daw the reason, sabi daw ng mangtatawas, na hindi daw ako makatulog sa bahay. Kasi may nakatingin. So, ang ginawa, I think pinausok nila yung mango tree. I can't remember the full story anymore. Pero after they did a ritual, nawala na. And when we moved to Iloilo, yes, I'm currently based in Iloilo, parang nag-intensify ng onte. Kasi it started off as feeling, of course, when you're a kid, you can't really understand minsan na certain natural things like the shape of a tree or rock, na you think it's funny, but it's actually not. So when we moved here in Iloilo, I made fun of a tree sa one of the schools that I moved to. Kasi it looked like a butt. I mean, what kind of kid doesn't make fun of it?
Yes.
And I was hit for the entire afternoon with this excruciating nausea. Even though I took a nap, it wouldn't go away. It's only when I said sorry sa tree that it went away.
Okay. So you realized na you offended the tree?
I offended. I offended the tree. The duwende daw. Kasi may kumakalat sa mga bata doon na duwende yung nakatira. And yes, I also saw spirits. I lived in a black house wherein there was a very black shadow figure that was haunting it. a lot of paranormal things over the years. For every house that I moved to, meron talaga nangyayari. I wouldn't say I'm a magnet, but it's just very natural for me. So it's to the point na kung may naririnig ako, sabi ko natutulog ako, sige, sige pa, okay.
Actually, may theory ako dyan. The other day ko lang naisip. Sabi ko, for people na nakaka-experience ng haunted house or haunted school or haunted office, could it be that the other way around na the reason na maraming hunting doon is because maraming sensitive na sa area. So similar to you na sabi mo lahat na pupuntahan mo haunted kasi lumalabas nga with the people we've talked to, sinasabi nila, lahat naman haunted eh.
Oo,
Hindi nyo
tama.
na nakikita. Oo.
Yes.
pero yung mga sensitive, nakikita nila.
It's even, yeah. It's even worse now sa mga BPO kasi 'di ba may mga stories sila about si Junjun or ang
Yes,
batang
yes.
office. What I've learned from an explanation from a friend kasi daw spirits are electromagnetic waves. So if we have more technology in a building, more spirits are attracted to it like a magnet.
Kaya marami sa
So that's a
yeah.
very nice. That's why marami sa BPO.
So dapat pala kontian ko computer at gadget sa kwarto. Baka maka-attract. Diyos ko, ganun pala yun. Pero meron naman isa nagsabi sa amin na sa BPO kaya daw medyo negative minsan. Similar to what again another person said, well, everything is energy, di ba? So for people who go to church, they release their energies, their wishes, their
Through
desires,
prayer, yes, that's
through
correct.
prayer, 'di ba? So they leave it there. Naiiwan sa church, and part of the job of the priest and the
It's
people there is
supposed
to
to
cleanse, 'di ba? Is supposed to cleanse it.
Yes.
And sabi nila sa BPO, maraming negative energy dahil sa mga irate call. Parang ganun yung
Oo,
sinasabi.
especially kung the customer is always shouting at you at parang bad trip ka palagi. Of course, it's going to
Yes, oo.
accumulate.
So parang kaya daw medyo negative rin yung vibe. So pag negative yung vibe, you attract negative entities rin. Kaya rin, yun nga, marami rin, well, from the people some people I've talked to, yung experience na ganun. Pero for you, so for you growing up, what age did you come to terms with, okay, I can see these things that people cannot. I can hear these things.
It was, when ba yun nangyari? I think I was around 17, 18. Kasi during that time, namatay yung near and dear kong grandfather. It was such a shocking death. But the thing is, during that time, on the week of his death, for every 3 a.m., may kumakatok.
On the dot talaga. I mean, 3 a.m. talaga.
On the dot. I wake up at 3 a.m. on the dot, tapos may kumakatok. Akala ko, okay, it could be the wind. It could be the wind kasi, well, umuulan. During that week then, my sister who is in the room next to me approached me and said, Manang, have you been experiencing weird things at 3 a.m.? Sabi ko, bakit? Kasi every 3 a.m. biglang bumubukas yung music box ko tapos tumutunog. And I'm like, okay. Sige, okay, Daddy, we get your message. Sige,
Okay.
matulog ka na. So yun, I started believing a little bit. I also started to read up on how to protect myself a bit.
Okay.
Things like that.
And then, curious lang rin ako, kasi from the people we've talked to, they say that everyone, again, has these abilities, these gifts. And the difference is everyone has some sort of affinity towards one gift you're stronger in that sense. I hate to use the term not stronger, but technically you are more sensitive in that ability. So what ability did you see na mas strong ka dun? Hearing, seeing, feeling?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. Now that I look back, siguro I was more sensitive in terms of smelling. Smelling and hearing. Smelling was very weird kasi minsan akala ko medyo going crazy na ako kasi
Yes.
may naaamoy ko na wala sa room. And it's only recently that I realized when I was studying more about the different abilities that you can actually start smelling and
Yes.
hearing.
Yes.
And it's actually very common. It's just that very much romanticized yung sight and
Yes,
feeling.
oo nga, oo, oo.
So, ayun. Smelling and then hearing.
So, ano yung mga weird na smell? I mean, weird
Okay.
question pero, oo.
Madami,
Okay.
actually. Sometimes, nung first encounter ko kay Loki, he would smell like coffee. Contrary to what most practitioners say that he sometimes smells like cinnamon, he would smell like coffee. I know that may namatay or my spirit na nag-pass by if I smell candle smoke. Specifically, candle smoke. Yung
Candle smoke.
bagong, bagong put out lang. Kasi di
Okay.
ba very distinct ang
Yes.
candle smoke.
Yes, yes.
And then, but may nag-break ng cycle na yan. It was for my best friend, si Nal Ferry. We were shopping for paper sa National Bookstore. And during that time, her mom just died and she's still in grieving stage.
Yes.
So we were paying sa cashier and then I smelled Chinese incense.
Mm.
And I told her, namoy mo ba yun? Sabi niya, hindi. Kasi parang may Chinese incense sa sa right side mo. Kasi she was on my right and then
Yes.
another right.
Yes.
And then she looked at me, hala ba kasi mami? Kasi she always lights the pink Chinese incense.
Okay.
And then it has then gradually changed to roses, anything floral. And then when I tell Nile Fairy that andyan naman ang smell, she would say, okay, si mami yan, I have to talk to her.
Ang galing. Pero meron, technically, na malolocate mo, ma-geolocate mo. Kunyari, it's to the right, it's to that corner.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell where the smell is coming from.
Ang the worst smell would be garbage.
Alam mo, sobrang, again, baka synchronicity. I was talking to a friend recently and she told me, one of our common friends, sabi niya, itong common friend natin, she has her ability open rin. Yun na sabi niya. Tapos sabi, she can smell rotten meat daw. So ako parang, I mean, alam ko naman nakaka-smell. Pero for you, when you smell that, ano yung association mo if you smell something like that?
Siya, negative intent eh.
Okay.
Because I know spirits, whether good or bad, usually yung mga taong pass on are always candle smoke. But to smell garbage, I know that it is an entity that has been snooping around, that does not wish me or certain someone good intentions. And it has been very consistent, in many trials and errors. So when I smell that, I know.
When you said that it came side by side with hearing rin, so what things would you hear that are, I mean, not usual or that you can tell na, okay, this is something spiritual?
Kasi back then, I've been hearing mga knocks na unusual na hindi maririnig ng tao.
Yes.
There was a time that I could hear people or spirits speaking my name. It's even worse kasi nasa school. So imagine if you're a kid and then you would say, narinig niyo yan? And then other kids would call you crazy.
Yes.
It eventually led to me seeking psychiatric help. Kasi akala nila may schizophrenia ako because of this. So that's kind of unfortunate. That's also probably one of the reasons some of the medications I was subjected to kind of closed the ability for a few years. So yun, but I can hear sounds, whispers, minsan certain words, especially when I do tarot reading for my clients. I can hear things rarely that I can see.
So parang based on your interpretation or discernment mo, are you hearing your guides or are you hearing guides nila telling you stuff?
I would say it would be my guides because parang may distinct sound sila para sa akin. Minsan, it's not even a voice. Sometimes it's a word that flashes into my brain, but it kind of feels like a sound.
Yes,
so parang subtitle sa biglang lumabas.
Yes, oo.
It's pretty much different na because certain spirits for me have certain sounds. If they actually have evil intent, iba na talaga yung feeling. It's just, it feels unwelcoming.
Yes. How do you, so for discernment naman sa guides mo, Iba-ibang smell rin sila, ganun. Ganun ba yung dating sa'yo?
Well, so, as I said, si Loki, he sometimes smells like coffee.
Yes.
Pero kung galit siya, apoy. Like, akala ko minsan that, that technically he has caused many fire accidents and fire hazards. But generally, yes, apoy, smoke. Si Freya naman, very floral.
Yes.
Minsan to the point na, pabango. I'm not a fan of very fancy perfume, but
Okay.
she likes it. So,
Okay.
okay. Kung iba naman, let's say, kung si Archangel Michael, blue flashing lights.
Okay.
Pero, so far yan lang kay Archangel Michael. Pero, most of the time, it feels like someone intimidating is behind my shoulder. Contrary to what people say about Archangel Michael, na he's nice, pero sa akin, very intense, fiery energy talaga.
Actually, I've heard someone say that as well na parang sabi, feeling nyo parang love and light yung dating niya. Hindi eh.
Yeah.
Anger and matatakot ka, parang ganun yung sabi nila.
He's ready to make away to
Oo,
anyone.
yes. Oo, ganun nga daw. Ganun nga daw. When you call upon himself, parang meron pa nagkwento before na he or she called help from him nga. Tapos parang very mababaw lang pala yung kailangan niyang tulong. Parang nabigyan niya yung galit daw.
Bakit mo pa ako dinisturb?
Oo,
Parang ganyan.
parang ganun daw. So,
Oo.
curious lang. So, have you identified your guides? Other than Loki tsaka Freya?
Yeah, some of them I have identified. The other ones I'm not yet sure who, but I know that they're there. Well, aside from the deities, of course, yung mga dearly departed loved ones, I know that they're always with me, especially yung isa na bago lang na depart from this physical plane. They have been very helpful with business.
Okay.
Talaga. I'm getting a lot of business-oriented information for them, and it has been very helpful. I think they want me to succeed. Yan lang.
Oo.
Number one. That's it's really amazing, to be honest. Tapos, there is another one, in proxy lang, kasi my husband-to-be is also working with some. So, si Inari no Kamisama, sometimes si Metatron, if Metatron permits, kasi
Okay.
mahilig ako sa studies, siya hindi.
Okay.
Si Saint Augustine, I've been working with him after I have practically admitted that I want to work with him. He
Okay.
doesn't want to work with me.
Okay.
So
Okay.
because I love to read, I love research.
Yes.
And there is another one, Ebisu, ang Seven Lucky Gods for certain purposes din. And I finally got the go signal just now na si Amaterasu no Omikami, very intense. And Hades and Persephone. Finally si
Okay.
Hades and Persephone.
Curious ako, Aldo, alam ko matatakot ako. When you said na you got the go signal, ano yung, ano yung na-feel mo?
Kasi tumingin lang ako okay lang ba? Okay lang. I asked nga, okay lang. Yeah, sure, go. Kasi we had an agreement before that I wouldn't publicly announce sana
Okay.
that I will be working with Amaterasu no Omikami. But it seems like she is like, you know what? Sige na nga. There are sometimes that certain deities like to show off. Medyo, technically deities, though may they sound omnipotent in the folklore, but they have actually very human qualities. So sometimes I lost si Amaterasu when I talk about Loki and Freya too much. And she knows because she is my main na. So
Okay, yes.
Loki has stepped down from being my main and she is now sa taas.
Yes.
Meanwhile, si Hades and Persephone are just very much content to help around with the business with the Seven Lucky Gods. I'm not sure pa kung may papasok na Chinese pero mukhang meron.
Okay.
Pero right now I can't.
Okay.
But there was a time that although now that we're in the topic of deities, there are really times where there are deities that temporarily will come in and work with you.
Yes.
And there was a period that I had to work with Magwayan.
Okay.
It's mostly because I was living I just moved out at that time. And of course, I had no idea what I was doing as a freshly moving out adult.
Okay.
But I seem to have lived in a bad area, and it was near the sea.
Okay. Yes.
So she actually helped watch over me until we found a place a little bit closer sa heart ng city. And then we eventually said, okay, my job is done. I'll see you soon. If you need me, you will find me in where the ocean lies. So whenever I go sa beach, I would say hi. And parang okay lang. But she did not stay for very long. It's only that siguro she saw that I needed help, and none of my spirit guides are probably best equipped for that
Okay, yes.
situation.
Yes.
So siya na lang nag-step in.
Pero technically you did not call upon her for help.
No,
Oo, oo.
no. She came, I was surprised she came on her own accord kasi I know that sometimes Filipino deities can be very, um, I wouldn't say stingy, but very, very wary. And it's also during that time that I was like reading on Hinila Wood, because I am a literature graduate. So part of my curriculum, I have to study the Panay epics
Okay.
and attend seminars, and it's really very interesting.
Actually, Silver has a question. I also will ask that. A lot of people who listen to us, well, mostly Filipinos, pero the curiosity is, if they have guides, how do they talk to their guides? Parang ganon. So parang yun yung question ko for you is, when you have these when you communicate with your guides, how does it go for you? Parang same as question is Silver, do you have rituals first before you talk with your guides?
Back then, when I was starting, I did do elaborate rituals. Of course, open, close, salt circle, and also set forth boundary offerings. But as time passed by, it has become less ceremonial and more intimate. Although there are times that there's not much need for a ceremony, especially kung medyo urgent yung messages nila. And that's why I have found solace in a portable altar with me. That's why I have certain bracelets on me just in case.
Okay.
So I have certain bracelets for keeping certain connections, keeping away certain things,
Yes, oo.
and then protecting my energy. As
Yes.
for discernment, it took a while, but I would know depending on how they sound. For example, again, kay Archangel Michael, blue light or intense energy, angelic energy on my back. Kay Saint Augustine naman, it's like I have an intense need to open a book. So, yes, my bibliomancy, parang ganyan-ganyan. Kay Hades and kay Persephone, it's mostly business talk. We are
Okay.
very, how do I describe their energy? It's more like very formal. It's like you're in a conference meeting with corporate people. And they come and go lang. Parang may schedule sila.
Okay.
Although from time to time, he does complain to me if I'm slacking off. Tapos, is Loki. Now, the funny thing about Loki, he has been more specific on how he likes to present himself. If you play D&D or any board games, that's
Yes.
where he actually shows himself. Dice rolls or anything that involves shuffling. So the best way that he communicates with me is through my Spotify playlist.
Okay.
So I put on a Spotify playlist minsan out of random, and he would talk to me using the songs. The best way he likes to make fun of me is if he plays Never Give You Up by Rick Astley. So magre-rick roll talaga
Niro-recroll
yan.
ka pala.
Oo, oo. So I'm like, okay, anong mensahe mo? Sige na. Freya naman, it's like this intense need to put on my self-care ritual, yung mga beauty products. Parang ganyan, parang take care of your skin, girl. And, Amaterasu is a whole different thing, like super intense, esoteric energy. Until now, I still can't put the right words for it, but it's very formal. to a point that everything feels like a battlefield for her.
Parang war mode ka in a way, ganon.
Oo. But then again, somebody did tell me that business is war and sometimes life can be war.
Okay. May question si Silver. How are you able to discern that the one communicating to you is a particular entity? Well, Silver answer part of it na sometimes it's smell, and she mentioned nga here na sometimes may feeling. Pero for me, earlier, before you were able to technically form a deeper bond with them, how were you able to tell nga? Were there instances that you, a different malicious entity tried to deceive you? Kasi maraming nga
Okay.
trickster.
There are a
Ano?
lot. So, for example, the deities that I work with, they're actually they first communicated with me through animals. So birds talaga. And then cats and dogs. Those three animals talaga. The number one major message I got was when I turned 27.
Okay.
I was going to work early in the morning, around 5 a.m. So I think that time siguro very early yung sunrise. And I was walking alone in the morning and then biglang may dumating na Philippine owl in front of me and it descended on me and then zoomed away, going to my house. And you don't see Philippine owls in my subdivision
Yes.
specifically. And doon ako like, okay, that is amazing. Na-amaze lang ako. And yes, that's when I started to realize that they talk to me through specific animals. And when I hear a Philippine owl nearby the last time, the second time that I heard it was actually the hoots of the owl.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
just a few months ago. So I know talaga, okay, parang may mali or may something that's going on. So I parang immediately dyan ako nag-jump in. Though, if we flip it out sa medyo harmful or negative entities, I wouldn't
Yes.
say I wouldn't believe in negative because we all need positive and negative energies to balance out in our life. So I would say harmful.
Okay.
They're kind of worse because I can see them clearly.
Okay.
The last time that I saw was on the time that I actually worked with Magwayan. That's why she worked with me briefly. So we actually suffered a house fire, and we were going home tired and trying to, but recuperate from the day's event. And then when I went home to open the door, I looked up briefly and saw, how do I describe this nun? Parang, what horror movie had that nun?
Valak.
Parang si Valak.
Yes, the nun. Oo.
But it looks worse than Valak, to be honest. So I'm not even sure what's even worse than Balak, but that's pretty much the closest thing I would describe it. And it disappeared. We went inside, and the thing is, it felt like an entire barangay of spirits were just watching us from the window. And it's already to the point where I was having chills and shakes at that moment.
Yes.
So it's a really bad combination of both sight and feeling.
Yes.
So it was only when I actually accepted the help from Maguayan that it went away.
So initially, there was an offer and hindi mo muna tinanggap at first. Tama ba?
Oo, kasi I didn't know how to work with Filipino deities. And given that we are still scrambling for more information on the deities for specific regions, and I still had to get my hands on the full copy of the Hinila Wood. Even though we already have certain snippets here and there, but I prefer to have my own physical copy so I could read at my leisure and take notes.
Yes.
So ayun, I accepted the help and she was happy to work briefly.
Since may background ka sa Wicca, pero baka lang makatulong. Kasi again, one of the advocacies of the podcast is we try to educate listeners on how to protect. And I usually ask this from different practitioners because there are different modes of belief, di ba? Merong mga, ayan, same as you, may Wiccan background. I'm not sure kung ano pa yung ibang background mo. May iba naman na mas, let's say, local Philippines na LNK. Meron naman mas religious na mas sa artifact sa church, mga ganun. So, for you, when you, let's say, when you do your, let's say, spirit work, what protection do you do? I mean, sabihin mo lang yung pwede mo share. I mean, baka merong mga
Ah,
stuff na ay, hindi pwede share. Pero ano yung pwede mo share na for people who are discovering their spirituality and kasi may perils, meron rin na delikado dyan eh. So, what can you advise in terms of protection?
okay. So the best protection that we have is actually readily available in our supermarkets, and it is salt. So I have bowls of salt in my window panes. I sometimes go beyond and add garlic and ginger. Why garlic and ginger? They're actually very protective aside from good components for manifestation. So salt is one of the purest minerals we ever have ever known and has been used in ancient times. In Japan, they use it to. Oh boy, wow! My candle just went went crazy. So in Japan, it is used to um, in front of stores to basically protect the store from negative energy if or anything that passes through. So yes, salt is good, but if you have pets, you can actually replace it with eggshells, specifically crushed eggshells. So kung may kasi salt is bad for animals especially if you have cats and they love to lick everything. Yeah. Or if plantita ka tapos ang dami mong halaman sa hardin, use
Yes.
eggshells. They
Oo.
are actually very good replacements because they're also very protective. They call it cascarilla in the practice, but I go for crushed eggshells. Just make sure you clean the parang the skin underneath the shell before you crush it.
Okay.
And then scatter it. It's going to be very safe for the plants, and the animals won't even lick it. So very simple. Tapos, if ever you want to feel extra safe, you can have wind chimes. Sound is actually a good way to cleanse and protect your space. Tapos, if you want to go the extra mile, kuha ka ng wind chimes na may evil eye.
Okay. Ano yung
So
tsura
far.
ng evil eye? Sorry, wala akong
Ang
alam.
evil eye, kita mo yung yung mga Chinese booths that are selling those blue circles with dots
Okay.
in the middle. So those are evil eye amulets. And I believe in Italy, they call it the Maliocho eye. Oh, parang ganyan, I believe. So yes, those are just some very practical things. But salt has been my best friend, and it has proven itself time and again. And it's so cheap. Sometimes I don't even need to use too many crystals to
Okay.
protect my space. They have served different aspects na lang.
Okay. So, mas sa personal aspects na lang, parang ganun. Yung mga ibang crystals for you.
Oo.
Curious rin lang ako, parang ang dami mo nilalagay sa mga sa mga bintana. So, meron bang attacks dyan? I mean, meron ka bang na-experience na ganun?
Many times. Sometimes the worst attacks are from the people that I treated as friends, to be honest. There are really sometimes the worst attackers are the people we hold near and dear to us, to be honest. And it does hurt, but it's part of the craft talaga. And sometimes nga, nagmamanifest siya in different ways. Like, for example, I know that it's bad when my evil eye bracelet breaks or wears down talaga. Something gets smashed. Or it's just a feeling. Usually the feeling one is a very weak kind of attack. But I also, from time to time, just do egg cleanse.
Yes, so chismoso lang ako.
Okay.
So, when you said na some people you were close to, in the craft, meaning Wiccans rin, ganun ba?
I wouldn't say Wiccans, but they tend to consider themselves as practitioners talaga.
Practitioners, okay.
I wouldn't even call myself Wiccan kasi I do believe that I have transcended Wicca and have evolved more into a witch or a sorceress, as some would say. So, ayun. When you grow, we know this, even career-wise, when we grow, there are really some people who do not wish us to succeed.
Yes.
Unfortunately so.
Can you expound on that when you said na let's say mas sorceress na? Meaning, what practices are different from... Kasi again, this is just me now. Kasi wala akong idea talaga. Naalala ko lang kasi na-mention mo nga D&D. So, so sa D&D may warlock, may ganyan, di ba? May iba. So parang if you were to classify the stage you are in right now, nasa ang stage yung pagka-sorceress?
So Wiccans are mostly traditionally inclined, so they follow this. I would say that they're also in a way a organized religion of sorts that follow nature-based entities, especially the Green Father and the Earth Mother, if I remember right. Now, being a witch is, you can be a pagan, but sometimes pagans are not witches, really. Witches work with their environment to be able to create magic, for lack of a better term. Sorcery or sorcerers or sorceresses actually work with their inner self first. So they use the environment as an extension of their own power. So you are technically the source. Yes, you may have a deity, but the deity is like an additional support talaga. The main person making things happen is you.
Okay.
So think of it, witch is external going internal. Sorcerer is internal going external.
Okay. Medyo nahirapan ako i-process.
It's okay, it's okay.
Pero, I mean, first time ko siya ma-encounter.
In a way, that's what I've discovered
Yes,
personally.
yes. Okay, medyo weird question. So, given that you are communicating with different deities nga, weird question have you encountered deities or spirits that are not of this world, meaning extraterrestrial in nature?
So far, wala pa. Wala pa. I have encountered deities of other practitioners. I've talked to them, but as for extraterrestrial, not yet. But I hope to, because I do believe that we are not alone in the universe.
Do you get messages rin from dreams? Just curious lang.
Yes, very strong, especially for specific zodiac seasons. Cancer season has been intense, but not as intense as when Pisces comes in. Like, I can't sleep because of the dreams na back to the back na feeling ko, gusto ko nang matulog pero gising pa rin ako sa tulog ko. Kind of feeling. So, ayun. So, those seasons, sometimes I need extra help like herbal tea na pampatulog.
Okay.
O di kaya I have to really do extracurricular activities to help me brush off the extra energy kasi very intense.
Have you encountered entities that technically you cannot explain? Meaning kasi in general you're a bookworm, you read this stuff, you do your research. So have you encountered entities na parang, uy, wala to sa books, wala to sa mga oo. Can you tell us about
kasi, actually I discovered that first sa Norse. Kasi Norse has been, we all have the same background sa Norse because of the Eddas. And when I started exploring the Eddas even more and de-Christianizing and decolonizing things, doon na sila biglang nagsisilabasan. Yung intensity ni Thor, yung may pagka-assholeish ni Odin, parang ganyan. Sorry to those who follow Odin, but he wasn't nice to me, so medyo on the bad side sa bad to not list. So, and then of course, yung the other entities that's attached to Norse paganism then. But I guess siguro I would say that the most intense and confusing actually would be the Japanese ones kasi siguro language barrier. So there are sometimes things that they want me to do but I can't really explain on how they want me to do it.
Okay.
Tapos the thing is when ever since working with certain Japanese deities, the kami, it always coincided with natural phenomena. So storms, lightning, heavy wind, heavy rain. And minsan, like ako, who wants just a plain sunny day while out doing booths sa
Okay.
city, you're
Yeah.
like, bakit kapag uulan? Bakit? On
Mm-mm,
this day,
mm-mm.
walang pupunta dito.
Mm-mm.
Parang ganyan na feeling. And then it would stop. Or I would ask, ang init, pwede konting hangin. And then it would happen.
Okay.
So, it's very, very unusual.
But entities na hindi, the reason I ask kasi one of the things that I'm trying to
Unless you're
understand,
asking for demons.
well, kasama na rin yun, pero hindi. Meron kasi, meron encounter yung, a few people who we've talked to, they've encountered this entity which we could describe as a hat man. Yun yung description.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Cryptids.
No hindi siya cryptid eh.
Hindi
Well,
siya
di ko alam.
cryptid.
Di ko alam. Pero ang experience ng iba is one girl said this entity would drag her her spirit nasa astral realm would drag her and bring her to it's like a castle and may school dun sa castle. Another girl we were talking to encountered this same entity pero she did not engage. And the entity could not drag her naman this time. Pero when I was talking to the other girl, they were able to complete each other's sentences describing this school, this classroom that
Okay,
they
baka
would be brought
na-drag
to.
sila into different dimension.
Yes, so parang we've had 2 or 3 more people tell us experiences with the Hatman. Kasi ang consistent lang kay Hatman is parang similar to the cryptid na Slenderman-ish. Tall, wearing Americana, tapos may top hat. Or I don't know if
So
bowler hat yun.
far, wala. The
Wala.
closest would be shadow entities. Shadow kids, shadow entities. Usually sa school, but the worst one was when I moved here in Iloilo for the first time. And most of them was actually a shadow entity looking at you from outside the house. I cannot remember, unfortunately, if he had an Americana. But who knows? Maybe the reason why hindi ako siguro na nakita niya is because I'm working. I'm already at a different vibration,
Probably.
and I'm very much aware that entities exist.
Yes.
So better way to just prematurely protect myself.
Oo nga. Better nga ganun. May questions ba kayo dyan? I think si Quintus is, recently we were talking about Norse gods and deities, and he mentioned to me na, theory niya lang, na possible ba na these Norse entities or these Norse deities are extraterrestrial in nature, because he said na Jotuns, tama bang Jotuns, they were described as blue-skinned. Tapos there are extraterrestrials who are blue-skinned. So parang, again, similar to MCU, pag inisip mo, yung pagka-lay down nila na yung different realms nga are, technically, they are different, let's say, different dimensions, but of extraterrestrial nature. So I'm not sure if you would agree with that or if you have thoughts on that.
Kasi the thing is, the MCU really doubled down on the blue-skinned Jotuns. Pero if we actually reanalyze the text, every single deity in the Norse pantheon descended from a Jotun. And Jotuns are of different skins. So pretty much like us. Odin will not tell you, but he is Jotun actually. He's not Aesir. He was born from a Jotun. All of the creatures were born from a Jotun, which is Ymir, and from, well, Audmunhula, which is a divine cow. So it's kind of very odd that then again, we already have seen ancient aliens say that even the ancient Egyptians are extraterrestrial. Freya is actually not an Aesir, but she is parang Vanir. She is, Aesir are the ones that live in Asgard. It's just a place. Parang in a way, you're saying that a Filipino is a Filipino because they live in the Philippines, or an American is an American because they live in the United States of America. Now, the Vanir, although they are from Vanheim, and Freya is part of the fair-skinned folk that lived, hailed from Vanir, together with her brother, Freyr, and well, a lot of others. That's why we have to decolonize the text, because the text, or rather the Prose Edda, is heavily Christianized by Snorri Sturluson. So we have to remember that the one that wrote down into paper the different Norse is actually a monk that kind of wanted to translate the passion of Jesus Christ and of
Okay.
course God
Mm-mm.
into the mythology, so that it could so that Christianity could assimilate better with the Norse. Think
Mm-mm.
about it as how we were colonized. We had deities that are, I forgot the deity, parang si Santo Niño in a
Mm-mm.
way, that
Yes.
was assimilated into the Philippine pantheon. I forgot which one, but these are ways for these colonizers to actually make the transition from animism, which is a nature based religion, towards Christianity. So, yes, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, actually. And we're still at the iceberg tip of actually understanding these myths. People like Arith Harger and Ocean Keltoy, these are YouTubers that I follow, actually are doing research, academic research, especially Arith Harger, who is an archaeologist. They do research just to try to de-Christianize and decolonize the text to be able to
Yes. Yes.
help
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
and clear out certain things,
Mm-mm.
especially that, well, certain white people loves to uh, blow up certain things. So it's kind of like saying that we all had spirits. So it's kind of also like saying that Yahweh is an ancient alien.
Mm-mm.
And I'm pretty sure that Christians wouldn't want to hear that God is an alien.
Well, if you follow the if you follow the ET community beliefs, they're saying na technically the Yahweh that in the Old Testament was actually an alien. Kaya parang ang point nila
Anyway,
is pagpansinin niyo yung actions ni Yahweh sa Old Testament, very para siyang spoiled child.
in a
Yung
way,
ugali
we
niya, 'di
also
ba?
had Nephilim, which were
Yes.
giants, and
Oo.
that
So,
is in Abrahamic folklore.
yes. And yun nga, those Nephilim are supposedly crossbreeds from that ET race. Yun.
And yeah, and if we're just going to say that these, well, the Jotun is blue skinned, maybe it's because we are heavily influenced by media and cinema. Because I know for a fact that the original text never really mentioned skin color. The only time that they actually nga they Loki was barely mentioned, to be honest. Thor did not really have blonde hair. Very vaguely ang description ng hair color din. But they usually would describe him as fire. That's why a lot of people would say that, okay, Thor is actually a redhead. So, yeah, in a way, it also depends on our perception. I would say that, well, I don't actually see them having specific skin color.
Skin
If they want
color.
to present themselves as the same skin color as mine, then so be it.
Kwento sa question, yung fairy otherworld or yung Encanto world, Banwanon from PH Folklore, are they similar to the Nine Realms in Norse? Have you read about this?
Yeah, I'm the nine realms, yes, but we have to remember that all mythologies were can be interconnected because they travel. The Vikings, well, technically the ancient Norse, because Vikings is a profession, not the name of the culture itself. So the ancient Norse actually traveled. They traded, they bartered way before they started raiding. And of course, maybe at some point we would these stories interconnecting each other have gotten convoluted. We have our fellow Malay races that have their own different realms. In Japan, the Eastern Asians also have their different realms then. Even in Egypt, there are different realms, even in the underworld. So, in a way, we have to treat that everything is interconnected. They will be similar at some point. And we can also say that, okay, at really some point that kahit wala pang internet back then, they found means to actually connect their stories together. And I think
Yes,
that's a
oo.
beautiful thing. We were connected even without the internet. Or maybe it's also because of Pangea.
Could be. Yes. And pero yung distance, 'di ba? Pag inisip mo yung distance, even if it can be traveled by foot, pero yung distance parang hindi siya logical na paanong same yung construction minsan nung parang pyramid structures nila, 'di ba? Yun yung we will
Well,
find out.
there's also pyramids in South America. So
Yes, oo. And yun nga, in China supposedly there are pero hindi na mapicturean. Wait, that's what I've been trying to find out if the Celts or the Norse had any connection to the Philippines, baka via the Spanish. Well,
trade routes. I would say trade routes. We should not downplay how powerful the trade routes was, whether it was through the galleons, or through the spice road.
possible, yes.
I mean, Buddhism spread throughout the world because of the trade routes from India.
Yeah. Sometimes I try to find the connection for my theory. So, can I ask what your ancestry is? Kasi parang, for me, parang inisip ko, kung may connection yung ancestry or yung lineage ng person with their abilities, with their affinities, like you do. Can I ask what your ancestry is? We can cut this out if ayaw mo.
That's fine. Actually, I really wish that we have those ancestry kits because I want to know deeper where I stem from. But from what I know lang sa mga many family reunions namin is that on my mother's side, I am half, well, no, I wouldn't say half, but I have Chinese blood in me. Chinese traders came here and married with Spanish merchants, and that's where Konlu, my blood, I am from the Konlu clan, so I am descendant from one of the three brothers that they had that lived in one of the old districts here in Iloilo. Um, on my father's side stems far, far back, as far as I can remember. Unfortunately, it's so convoluted. I'm having a hard time tracing where talaga in Spain that we came from. However, one of the things that I know that my on my father's side they lived in Negros, and I know that they were practitioners. But that's the most that I know.
Hindi ko ma-connect sa theory ko.
Okay.
Okay.
Ayun.
Okay lang, okay lang,
It's
okay lang.
okay, it's okay. Kasi I would say na ancestry is more of bloodline.
Yes, oo. Pero yun nga,
But
oo.
ibang question naman kung ancestry mo is like looking into past lives because we also have to put in the benefit of the doubt about the many past lives because sometimes it's not even connected to us by blood. Sometimes
Yes,
it's your
yes.
soul jumping from one person to another.
Have you had your past life reading or Akashic reading?
I've had past life readings before. And it's helped me work through certain shadow work. It was actually I had my first during 2020 and it was the most difficult break out of that one specific loop.
Kwento sa question. So, parang may confusion ata sa Norse mythology if Freya and Frigg, Frigga ba yun o Frigg? Are the
Frigg or
same.
Frigga.
Oo. Like, na Frigg is a title meaning loved one. Would you know that?
I actually would think they are the same person or the same entity really. Because the thing, as I said before, we have the Norse myths, the Eddas have been so convoluted with, well, how they were translated. That's why we're still decolonizing and dechristianizing them. But it seems like Freya has a lot of identities, of course, because she is a witch and a sorceress. There are also stories that say that she is also the witch that was burned after the walls of Asgard were built that's another story. That's another fucking story, really. But yun, she has a lot of identities, much like Odin. So they are one convoluted lot, to be honest.
Okay, yes. Yun maganda question, naisip ko lang. Since you are trying to decolonize nga the teachings or the books we have read throughout the years na technically colonized sila. For me kasi, personally, I think the term demons are from the, baka mali ang ano ko, pero parang for me, parang,
Abrahamic?
hindi eh. Pero for me, parang yung concept na demon kasi,
Daemon, yes. Thank you, Silver. Yes, it's a Greek word
yes,
actually,
yes,
meaning I think servant or maybe entity, which is kind of bastardized if I say so myself. But that's just my opinion.
So how would you classify a demon? Kasi yun nga, ayoko mag-classify talaga.
Would say that they're still pretty much spirit entities, spirit guides, but a little bit more specific. That's why I, although there is a calling to that, I would say I would only jump into that gun if I'm very sure of what I'm doing. Because they are, in a way, it's parang you have to read the terms and conditions 24/7. And I'm not very good at that, so.
Another question from Quintus. Are there any relations between the Norse gods and the Philippine entities? Would you know if they have conversations between themselves?
Okay. This is very interesting because what is the common denominator between Philippine entities or deities and Norse gods? They are all from nature-based religions, animism. Loki was not Loki back then. They're actually saying that he could be a fire spirit that probably rose into godhood because of modern media, or rather the Eddas themselves. Plus the fact that the Eddas kind of demonized him simply because they needed a villain to play the part in Ragnarok. So of course, in every story, there has to be a villain, pretty much like in how they also did the same to our mythologies. And if you would see that they have specific, I would say that I would like to relate this to Shinto, kami. Now, the kami in Shinto is not just related to nature. It is also related to concepts, values, even us. We are all kami, but not everybody can ascend to becoming a god, basically in the Japanese belief. So, in a way, if I'm going to just conclude a little bit, that in a way they are related because of the core foundation that Norse and Philippine mythology started off with animism. So it's a very, very interesting. It's really good. If only I was a sociologist or anyone related to that field, I would do an intense study on it. But I'm not. So it's a really good academic plunge into that. I really want to read certain papers about it because there are the academic field towards that is actually very abundant with a lot of questions now that we're hitting a new renaissance in terms of spirituality.
Yes, so right now especially. Silver has a question about Amaterasu. Sol is a Norse sun god. Amaterasu is the Japanese sun goddess. You're in communication with Amaterasu. How are you able to reconcile these entities? Are they the same entities or are they different?
Now, here's the thing. I don't just because I work with a certain pantheon doesn't mean I work with everything. We have to remember that Shinto is a religion or maybe a spirituality that has over 7,000 kami. The Norse pantheon has a lot then, and probably more than what we know and are just lost in time. So in my practice, I limit only to those who I work with. If we're going to look at in a more cultural sense, Amaterasu has her own way of communicating with me. I have not communicated with Soul at all, although I'm quite familiar with them. So we also have to remember that they come from different cultural backgrounds. So we should also honor the cultural background of these deities. And of course, they will be very much different
Yes.
from person to person.
So one challenge for you is since you work with deities of different, technically, geographic locations, you have to know how to deal with them different, diba? Separately.
Yes, I
Yes.
have technically you have to study. That's
Oh,
why
yes,
part
yes.
of being in the craft is you have to constantly study. It is a perpetual scholarly work.
Yes, yes. Oh,
So you know how it was very difficult to start off with Shinto. That's why I was very hesitant because there's a language barrier.
yes.
But now that I found leads that there are actually available books that are translated in English, and now more and more websites are becoming more accessible. It has become easier now to connect, and maybe the final, siguro the nail that will hit the coffin head to fully work with them is actually doing a pilgrimage.
Okay. So you have plans to do that?
Yeah, once the, well, the traveling thing is
Yes.
okay na. Okay, I thought I at least had a question. Are the demons closer to the way it was depicted in his Dark Materials trilogy? Is the I okay? I think the Dark Materials trilogy was the Dark Compass, right? I haven't
Yes.
seen yet.
Yes. Okay.
So okay, in a way, because you form a relationship with him, technically. But I wouldn't say, I think medyo differently, because I think in the Dark Materials trilogy, parang you can be attached to only one.
Yes. You have, parang technically they're parang familiars, eh, 'di ba? If you think about it. Yeah. Sa dark sa book, sa book. Parang ganun.
In a way. Kasi, but then again, the spirit guides that I'm working with are not familiars. Iba naman
Yes.
ang familiars. They're
Oo.
kind of like servants. In a way,
Okay.
to put it in a certain word, but I think they don't want to be called a servant. They kind of want to be called a partner.
Yes. Oo. They do, of course. Kat, tell us about your before we end, maybe you can tell people about your podcast and other things you might
Okay,
want to,
okay.
yeah.
So I'm currently working on my podcast, Bramble Book Radio. So it is a podcast that puts witch in witchcraft, or rather the craft in witchcraft, and spirit in spirituality, one take at a time. So I interview different practitioners and people who are interested in topics just like the paranormal and such. And we get to know more about, well, the spirituality in the craft. So far, I only had one episode because I just launched it with Obscure, and they are an esoteric and practitioner and occultist. So we discuss things more in a more academic, scholarly way. But I'm looking forward to talking to more specific practitioners like an astrologist, and maybe, hopefully in the future, a demonologist.
Oh, very interesting.
Aside from that, I am a full-time businesswoman for Alchemy Apothecary, which is my mindfulness business. So we make candles and such. And then, of course, I do also tarot and alignment coaching under the name Bramble Witch.
So most probably I'll put the links up on the show notes so people can follow you and follow the podcast. So any more questions, guys, before we let Kat go kasi naka 1 hour na tayo.
Okay, si Quintus meron. Was there an inherent difference between spirit and God, or was that ascension to Godhood something external? Okay, I think iba-ibang rules for different cultures. So for example, I'm going to use Shinto again, kasi you need to have a specific number of years, or at least people remember you for a long time, and associate you to something before you become kami. So that's why we have there are warlords and there are scholars that have become kami. So one of them would be Tenjin. I became familiar with him because of the anime Noragami. So if you really want to know how someone ascends to godhood, the anime Noragami actually explains it beautifully through anime. So what can you advise, kay Silver? What can you advise to those who are interested in walking the path as yours? Um, okay, I'm going to be clear. I am pagan, so I follow different paths, juggling a lot of paths and cultures. you have to be 100% sure that you are on board with this. Though there are practitioners that have walked away from it, it has brought them a lot of hardships along the way because they rejected the spirits that they work with. And it does not bode well because we respect contracts, we respect relationships. And if you just walk away without just any explanation or apologizing on why, they will certainly go after you. So be sure to be on this path. Be prepared to be open actually to the other realm, because for the other realm like the Encanto, we are just a blink of their eye. But once you start opening yourself up to the craft, you become a shining lighthouse to them, and they will be very curious on you. So
Ayun.
yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kat. Thank you for the time
Sure.
and for
Sure.
answering
Sige,
our
sige.
questions.
Sure.
Thank you again, Kat, for taking the time to share your experiences with me. Deity work is still a concept I am struggling to understand to this day. But slowly, with the people I get to talk to, the puzzle of deity work and the different deities begins to create a clearer picture. In case you missed it, Kat mentioned that she had a podcast as well, so I'll post a link to that in the show notes. Thank you also to Kayolen for referring Kat. Next week's episode will be another conversation about deities, working with deities. And as I've actually talked with a few people in unpublished episodes, I believe I've just scratched the surface as to how we interact with these entities and how they figure themselves in the spiritual realm. As I mentioned in the intro, the psychic in the US I talked to who had a connection with Loki and Thor was actually on Discord. It was a live chat, and we got to talk to him there because he had a hearing disability. That's why it was easier for him to do it via chat. So if you want to see our conversation with C and Dro, you can check out the link in the show notes. If this is the first episode you are listening to, hello. In the Paranormal Podcast, we get first-hand stories from people with real-life experiences with the paranormal. Mostly, of course, from a Philippine perspective, but there are times we have guests from different parts of the world, as I tend to compare and share what folklore and beliefs we have here, and maybe we'd see a connection. Experiences in the podcast range from human spirits, elementals, celestial beings, and cosmic entities. If you enjoy conversations about the paranormal, you might want to subscribe and listen to all our past episodes. Each episode opens the curtains to the invisible world most of us cannot perceive. We are on Spotify, YouTube, and Facebook if you want to catch us. New episodes come out every Tuesday, 7 p.m. on Spotify, and Thursdays, 1:37 p.m. on YouTube. If you have experiences with deities, foreign or local, that you'd like to share, you can email it to me at paranormalsph@gmail.com. If you want to share it via chat, you can join the Discord server of the podcast. I'll post the invite link in the show notes. A big shout out and thanks to the Paranormal Patreons and coffee supporters: Sunny, Jay, Z, Chris, Cal, B, and Leah. Many thanks for your support. If you are interested in supporting us via Patreon or Coffee, I'll post the link in the show notes. There are different tiers of support on Patreon that gives you access to certain parts of the podcast process. You can check it out in the link. If you want to support the podcast in other ways, you can always play it loud while going out for a walk. Joke lang, noise pollution yan. You can always leave us a review on Facebook or give the show a rating on Spotify. I really believe that helps the podcast reach a wider audience. The Paranormal Podcast is engineered and produced by F90 Productions. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe. LL Peeps! Okay, gaya nyo sabi ko last week, part 2 ito ng higher self. Tungkol naman ito sa observations about acquired savant syndrome. So, ano ang connection nito sa higher self? Okay, ano muna yung acquired savant syndrome? According kay paring Google, it is the presentation of often extraordinary scholarly skills that can emerge after a non-disabled individual suffers a traumatic brain injury or illness. Kasi may mga kwento nga na may mga tao na na-aksidente, nababagok ulo or nahuhulog basta na nagkakaroon sila ng serious injury, and then biglang after that, pag-recover nila, marunong na sila magpiano, may special skills na sila or whatever, or nagsasalita na sila ibang language na hindi nila alam before or hindi man lang sila exposed sa language na yon, and then nakakasalita sila flawlessly. So may napakinggan akong podcast before and sabi niya na possible na ang acquired savant syndrome is, yes, it was an accident, pero because of this physical accident, nabe-break yung barrier to your higher self. So yung mga past lives mo, kung ano man yung nagagawa mo before, kung ano man yung mga skills mo before, na-access mo ngayon. Parang ganon. And parang yun nga, parang meron ka access to that higher plane na walang sense of time, walang sense of, ibang sense of reality in a way. So, hindi ko alam yung ibang acquired savant syndrome, pero may narinig akong kwento before na sa Philippines to na nabunggo yung ulo, tapos suddenly nakakasalita na siya ng French flawlessly. Wala naman sa pamilya nila marunong mag-French. Hindi naman siya nag-aral ng French. Pero, pag magsalita siya, flawless na French. Kaya niya. Hindi naman yun lang yung sinasabi niya, pero kaya niya. So, doon nakakagulat yun. Di ba? Pag inisip mo, bakit paano yun? So, pag inisip mo, connected rin siya sa past lives eh. Okay, ano pa yung mga example ng ganyan? I-search nyo na acquired savant syndrome si Orlando Serrell. Check nyo na lang yung spelling. Orlando Serrell. So, nung nagka-acquired savant syndrome siya, nagkaroon siya ng weird na calendrical calculations. So meaning, magsabi ka ng any date, July 15, 1945. Parang ganon. And then masasabi niya sa'yo, anong araw yon, tsaka anong weather nung araw na yon. Diba? So, and yun nga, sabi nga, wala naman siyang prior knowledge sa ganyang bagay. Pero kaya niya gawin yun automatically. Meaning, magbigay ka ng date, masasabi niya weather, masasabi niya Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday ba yan, o Friday, o Saturday, Sunday. Masasabi niya yun. So akin, interpretation ko dyan, nung na-connect ko nga na, again, ako lang nag-connect na to, in theory ko lang rin, nag-agree ako doon sa nasabi sa isang podcast na pag na-access mo yung higher self mo or yung past lives mo, sabihin mo gano'n, o yung past knowledge mo, lahat ng acquired knowledge mo from all your past lives, kung meron man, kung marami man, o kung konti man, na-access mo ngayon dahil sa acquired savant syndrome. And yung kay Orlando Serrell nga, naisip ko, so technically, parang nababypass niya yung concept of time. Meaning, kasi actually kaka-research ko lang kanina, block universe theory, na sinasabi nga na everything is happening all at the same time. The future, the past, the present. It is all presently happening. Parang ganon. So pag inisip mo, pag nasa higher self ka, ganon naman yung reality na kino-coexistan mo eh. Na hindi na siya third dimension. Baka fifth or sixth dimension na siya, di ba? So, yung concept of time, iba na. So, kung na-access yun ni Orlando Serrell, pag nagsabi ka ng araw, malalaman niya kung ano nangyari ng araw na yun. Kung anong weather ng araw na yun. Alam niya, hindi. Alam niya yung araw, alam niya kung anong weather na nangyayari. Kasi, may access na nga siya doon. Hindi niya, nababypass niya yung ating restraints of time. Diba? So, very interesting lang na, oo nga no, na possible na yung mga may acquired savant syndrome, either na-access nila yung past lives nila, or yung skills nila sa past lives nila, or yun nga, accumulated skills, accumulated knowledge ng higher self mo from all the lives it's lived. Parang ganun. Labo ba? Pero yun, wala lang. Nakakaaliw lang pag-isipin mong, para may connection. I admit, medyo leap siya. Pero pag inisip mo, paano mangyayari yun for a person na wala man lang background sa isang language sa isang kind of skill, marunong bigla magpiano. Yung iba, isa yun eh. Isa sa mga acquired savant syndrome yun eh. Bigla na lang marunong magpiano. Paano mo talagyan ng logic yun? Na never na-aral ng tao yun. Pero, nung nabagok ulo niya or na-aksidente siya, biglang magaling na siya. Isa sa mga, actually may doctor ako nakausap, sabi niya, sinabi ko ng teorya kong to, pero sabi niya sa akin, it could be, ina-attribute nila to neuroplasticity. So, possible na nung bata siya, nagka-connection na hindi siya aware, ang conscious brain niya, natutunan niya kahit paano ibang bagay. Tapos, itong mas matanda na siya, nabagok siya, na-connect ulit yung link na yun dahil sa neuroplasticity nga, na-connect yung links na yun, nagagawa niya na ulit. So, that is one possible explanation. Ako naman, ang hilig ko syempre yung mga fringe fringe explanation. So for me parang mas nag-make sense na okay, baka nga pag minsan na-aksidente ka, na-access mo yung higher self mo o na-access mo yung nakaka-tap in ka to a different to a higher dimension, and you get to process all your acquired skills, diba? Ayun, napahaba na. Sige na nga. Okay, pagbigyan nyo na ako sa aking mga teorya. Yun lang naman yun. Okay, sige. Pag may naisip kayong medyo parang ganyan, kasi hindi ko na nare-relate dati yan eh. Hindi ko nare-relate na, oo nga no, pwedeng past lives, pwedeng higher self. So yun lang. Pag-usapan na lang natin sa Discord. Sige. Iingat. Bye-bye.